Matrix, they were influenced by Gnostic thought.
Right.
Yeah,
so what Star Wars, right? The Force. Right. The Force has one of the other features of Gnosticism is its Manichaeism. That there's not an all good, beneficent, loving God. There's a demiurgic sort of force that has a dark side and a light side. I mean, Christianity, in its struggle with Gnosticism, prevailed, but it was never able to drive a stake through the vampire's heart to keep it in the coffin. It keeps popping up. It did in the Middle Ages. It did in some ways in the early modern period. Descartes' conception of the person is fundamentally Gnostic, and now it's back again today.
I mean, I think in some ways there would be some divine irony if the Terminator scenario actually played out, because the things that we've created to serve us then turn on us. Mm-hmm. So in some ways it would be divine justice, because God created us and to serve him, and we've turned on God.
Yeah, if the divine power of reason, the gift of God, that's the most godlike thing about us, were used to degrade our very humanity, that is a profound tragic irony.
Yeah. So I think we should all be really concerned, because things are happening at a very fast rate, and one of the things about this idea of progress is you can't stop progress, but there's ample evidence historically to say that you can at least slow it down. The Ottomans, for instance, prohibited the use of the printing press for 400 years. And people think that they did it because they were against books. It's not true. They actually did it because the scribe lobby was so powerful.
So it's basically just like today.
It's basically just like today.
Crony capitalism.
The scribe lobby could literally, they had master calligraphers that spent a long time to learn how to do this. They had 400 people in a factory. Each one would do a page, and they'd do a book in very quick time. And so the idea of bringing in these machines to replace all these people, what would the people do? That was basically the idea behind it. And the other thing is they didn't like the idea of pounding for the Quran. They thought, first of all, to write it backwards was sacrilegious, because that's something they do in magic. And then the other was the pounding. So that's just an example where they actually thought about it and decided that it's not really a good thing to eliminate all these jobs, like now all the cab drivers with Uber. And now Uber, I think, is getting in trouble, and there's some other group coming up. But now with the automation, we're going to be driving driverless cars pretty soon. And there's a pretty good argument, because apparently several of them drove across the United States and got into 3 accidents, all caused by human drivers, right? So the actual automated cars didn't get into accidents. And I think these are going to be the arguments that are used. And even surgery and things like this, robots are doing a lot of things. I don't think people are really quite aware of what's actually happening out there. And I was at the World Economic Forum. They had a meeting here with a lot of CEOs from Silicon Valley. And one of the things that was said in there was we need to prepare the Americans for all the jobs that are going to be lost in the coming years. And they were talking about white-collar jobs. They weren't talking about labor. They were talking about white-collar jobs. So these are very serious concerns, I think, for us. But also, technology is changing us. One of the things about, in the Catholic tradition, and also in the Islamic tradition, there's something called acedia, which is one of the 7 deadly sins. And acedia, which they call the noonday devil. Acedia is actually, it's translated as sloth, but it's not really a good translation, because people think sloth is laziness. Acedia is a type of spiritual laziness, but the hallmark of it is distractibility. And it's one of the real deadly sins. It's a mortal sin, because if you get into an ascetic state, you'll never focus, constantly distracted. And one of the things with young people now, with all this technology, is they're losing the ability to concentrate. They're losing the ability just to be present, to focus. They're constantly being distracted. And so that distractibility of these machines that are calling us, one of the things about compulsion, we talked about no compulsion in religion. Many of us are living lives of compulsion, that we're compelled by things internally and externally. And one of the most important aspects of religion is to free people so that they become not slaves to themselves or to their lower impulses, but literally they're freed by becoming servants of God, in control of themselves, of their appetites, the concupiscent soul, the irascible soul. this was at the heart of these religious trainings. That's why discipline was so important. The idea of just disciplining the soul, spiritual practices to do this. And so I think the idea what Richard Weaver called the stereopticon, this idea about television, radio, and media. Whereas now, if we think about, I mean, he was worried about it back then.
Now we have
all of
internet,
these things. And we've got so many people. I mean, we had some girl the other day was taking a selfie and fell off a bridge. It's just so strange to see what's happening when you look now. Everybody wants to take pictures. And I always, I remember years ago I was in Morocco and there was a very old Moroccan man. Somebody wanted to take a picture, and he said, he went with his heart, take the picture here, keep the memory here. And I think one of the things, we now see more images in a day than a Victorian saw in their entire lifetime. And one of the things about traditional metaphysics is images are very important. And images, there's a belief that images are embedded permanently. That's why whenever I see these, they have these ads for films, there's scenes in this film you'll never forget. That's a reason not to see it. Because people are watching now like torture. They're watching, the average American child by the age of 18 sees about 18,000 murders by the age of 18, simulated murders. And you just imagine what these things are doing to our psyches.
Although